Hi.
How are you?
I'm sorry, Sarah and Ruthie.
Hi.
From our office.
Hi.
Hey, nice to meet
Your
you.
constituents.
What a pleasure.
Thought they should meet you and know where your office is.
Thanks for coming over, you guys. All right, so we'll come on back. Is that what we're going to do it back here?
Yeah. I think
Jamie, good afternoon.
Good to see you, Tom.
Good to see you. So we both first ran for office for the first time in 2006 from District 20. What motivated you to run for the state Senate?
That's a complicated psychological question, I suppose. But, you know, in the big picture, I'd been a professor of constitutional law for a decade and a half, and I'd written lots of law review articles and books and so on, and I think I really wanted to try to get some things done. And so I decided to throw my hat in the ring. My favorite story about it is when I first announced there was an article in the paper quoting a pundit who said Raskin's chances of victory are considered impossible. And 9 months later, we got 67% of the vote, and the Washington Post had another article quoting a pundit who said Raskin's victory was inevitable. So we went from impossible to inevitable in 9 months. So I like to tell the kids, you know, in politics, nothing's impossible, nothing's inevitable. It's only possible through the democratic arts of organizing and education and mobilizing people for change.
Absolutely, and hard work. So during the time we served in the General Assembly, we worked on several notable issues, including repealing the death penalty, the DREAM Act, marriage equality, and the legalization of medical marijuana.
Restoring voting rights to former prisoners.
Restoring voting rights to former prisoners, absolutely. Yeah. Those are all significant. Are there one or two that stand out as having the most personal meaning for you?
And gun safety, of course, in 2013, where we banned the sale of military-style assault weapons. And I guess, just speaking personally, when I was the floor leader for the marriage equality debate, I'll never forget what the feeling of that was like. You know, it was important to me. I had talked about that from the beginning when we first were announcing for office, when I went out on my front porch and I laid out everything I wanted to do, which included a lot of the stuff you were saying. And a woman came up to me afterwards. She said, Jamie, great speech. I love your speech. But one thing, take out everything you got in there about gay marriage, because it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. Even the gay candidates don't talk about it. And it makes you sound like you're really extreme, like you're not in the political center. And I had an epiphany at that moment, and I said, you know, I'm glad you're telling me that, because it makes me realize it's not my ambition to be in the political center, which blows around with the wind. It's my ambition to be in the moral center and then bring the political center to us. So I started fighting for marriage equality the moment I got in.
Marriage is a fundamental right, and yet there are tens of thousands of our constituents who still cannot marry.
Of course, we've got a big LGBT population in District 20, and it's a totally inclusive and supportive place to be gay in Silver Spring and Tacoma Park. You'll remember, Tom, I was actually sick at the time. I'd been diagnosed with cancer, so I was going through chemotherapy and everything. But anyway, we went through this big thing, and you know, it was a real struggle, and then we got the votes, and we passed it. And when it was all over, I got to, you know, you make a little speech as the floor leader when it's all over to talk about it. And I said, that fighting for marriage equality while I was going through this personal medical struggle taught me something important. I learned the difference between misfortune and injustice, because if, you know, you've got not one but two jobs that you love, and a family you love, and constituents you love, and friends you love, and a doctor tells you you've got stage 3 cancer, that's a misfortune. It's a terrible misfortune, but it's just a misfortune because it can happen to anybody. But if you're told you've got cancer and you can't get health care you need because you love the wrong person, it's not just a misfortune, it's an injustice, because we can do something about that. And so I was proud to be part of a process where we struck a blow against injustice, and we opened the institution of marriage up to everybody who lives in our state. And, you know, life is hard enough with the sickness and the illness and the misfortune and the heartache and so on, that government should not be compounding the misfortunes of life. And we became the first state in the union where the voters upheld marriage equality at the polls. And I went down to the Supreme Court for the Obergefell decision. I'll never forget this. And, you know, they read the opinion. It's this huge moment. It was like a year later.
My name is Jim Obergefell, and I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Mr. Obergefell left the courtroom, and he was surrounded by all these people, and they said, how do you feel? And he said, I feel thrilled and elated, but I want to thank the people of Maryland, because had they not done what they did, my partner and I would not have been able to go to BWI, Thurgood Marshall Airport, get married on the tarmac, and then fly back to Ohio. And then it was Ohio dishonoring their marriage that led to the Supreme Court decision. So Maryland played a really important role in the struggle for marriage equality. So that was a pretty special moment.
Bring these articles with a solemn purpose and a heavy heart, but in active faith with the constitutional oaths of office that we have all sworn.
Now you found yourself in the throes of the impeachment trial. Can you talk about the significance of your role on the House Judiciary Committee throughout the process?
Well, you know, everybody knows one thing, and I know about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and that's what I've devoted my professional career to as a professor. And so it has definitely come in handy during this period in terms of explaining to the public what high crimes and misdemeanors are and how the impeachment process works, with the House of Representatives acting as the prosecutor and the grand jury, and arraigning the president on articles of impeachment like an indictment, and then going over to the trial in the Senate. And I hope that those senators acting as jurors/judges will live up to their oath of office, which is to render dispassionate, impartial justice under the Constitution and the rule of law. They are not there to act as partisan operatives and to be thinking about anything other than what the evidence is.
Hello.
You've always, I think, stayed very close to the public. You and I think, both really emphasize constituent service, and our offices work very closely together to respond to constituents. Can you remind viewers of some of the constituent service your office provides and the reasons that they should call you?
What a wonderful question. Well, our constituents, as you know, are everything to us. I think about the meaning of the word constituent. You know, constituent means member of or part of, and I feel like our constituents are part of us and what we do. Well, I'm here in our Rockville district office, where our constituents come to see us with almost any kind of problem you can imagine, and some of them present problems that we'll work with you on, and other members of the council, and Mark Elrich, the county executive. But the first thing I want to say, of course, is you know, we're living in a time of a lot of partisan polarization, and I always like to think about my district office as the way we get beyond partisanship, because when people call us and they got a problem with their Social Security or Medicare check, but when people call us with a problem, it can be anything, we don't ask, are you a Democrat, are you a Republican, are you an independent? All we ask is, do you live here? Because I represent the people in Montgomery County and Frederick and Carroll, but do you live in the 8th District? If they do, that's all we need to know. We go to bat for them. I like to think of the legislative process in the same way. I don't think, is this legislation going to help Democrats? I think, is this going to help our people? Is this going to help the public? So I'm proud that our office aggressively serves all of the people of the 8th District, and we help people navigate the twists and turns of federal bureaucracy and federal programs. The federal government is the instrument of the people. It's there to help us, and so we are there to help my constituents access the services and the programs that they need.
What else do you want them to know about your work on Capitol Hill?
So, well, it's frustrating to report, but it's necessary that we have more than 275 bipartisan bills that we've passed in the House of Representatives. We have a do-nothing Senate, in a way. The universal criminal and mental background check on all firearm purchases. That's supported by more than 95% of the American people.
So we're screening out felons and fugitives, people who are violently unstable.
Common sense stuff that's perfectly constitutional, totally consistent with the Second Amendment, and they won't move it. We just did this great prescription drug reform bill, which we've named in honor of Elijah Cummings.
To fight for real competition and to fight against monopoly pricing.
We've got Americans paying 5 times, in some cases 10 times as much for prescription drugs as people are paying in other countries to the exact same company. So we're kind of subsidizing the rest of the world, and we're allowing big pharma to make off with these staggering profits. It just makes no sense. So, you know, there are people rationing their insulin, just ridiculous. So we passed the Equality Act for LGBTQ civil rights across the country. Nothing from the Senate. We passed the $15 minimum wage for across the country to give people a raise so that people are making a livable wage, and you don't have people working full time and still using food stamps to try to get by. And they won't move on it.
Well, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your great work, Tom Hucker, representing us in Silver Spring. And I especially want to salute you for what you did in making sure that we didn't get a really bad Beltway expansion plan just rammed down our throats. And so good work on that. I was thrilled that you mobilized and galvanized all of us into action.
Thank you so much for your support.